Mom, I'm so scared. I feel like someone wants to harm me. Someone wants to kill me. I'm truly terrified. There's no one in my room and no one is following me. I know it's just a feeling. I can't explain it, but it's so intense, Mom." These were the panic-filled whispers of a young girl over the phone on a fateful night. She was trying to describe to her mother a mysterious sixth sense that she could not logically explain. But little did that girl know, right as she was trembling in her empty room, the footsteps of death were indeed echoing closer and closer. A maniac with cruel intent was speeding through the night, driving straight toward her apartment. He was about to commit a horrific act. Although she had a chillingly accurate premonition about the visitation of death, it was a tragedy that the young girl ultimately could not escape the massacre that had been. So, what exactly happened? Let's turn back time to 2019 to unveil this tragedy. The story begins in New Rochelle, also known as New Row, a multicultural city located along the poetic Hudson River in New York State. This place is known for its clean streets, tight-knit community, and especially its extremely high safety index. In 2024, this place was even listed among the safest cities in America, a perfect picture of a peaceful life. However, like an unwritten rule of life, hidden deep beneath that tranquil exterior are always unforeseeable threats, dangers that no one expects but can strike at any moment. And today's story is the most gruesome proof of that. The victim in the story is Valerie Reyes, a beautiful and gentle 24-year-old girl. She lived alone in a quiet basement apartment in New Rochelle. Valerie was the little princess, the only daughter in a family of 4 siblings. Although Valerie's parents were not wealthy, they gave their children a genuine education. They taught them to love, to be forgiving, and always supported them in pursuing their dreams. Growing up in that love, Valerie became a girl with a kind heart, full of vitality. However, she was somewhat quiet and introverted. Her mother, Norma, always worried that her daughter was too gentle, too trusting of people. She feared that in this complex society, such a personality would make her easily exploited by bad people. In the eyes of neighbors and friends, Valerie never caused trouble. She was always polite and patient. She liked to travel alone, quietly paint, or curl up with a book, immersing herself in her own world. In particular, Valerie loved animals very much. Whenever she went out, if she saw the neighbor's dog, she would certainly stop to pet it. After graduating, Valerie worked while nurturing her dream of becoming a professional tattoo artist like her brother. At the age of 21, she began moving out to live independently. Valerie worked at a Barnes & Noble bookstore for nearly 3 years. She was always a hard-working, responsible employee who was loved by everyone. However, behind that customer service smile, the young girl secretly struggled with anxiety and depression. Despite her family's support, baseless panic attacks still frequently struck, pulling her into a state of solitude. Her love life was also full of obstacles. Her most recent relationship had just ended on January 24th, leaving her with deep sadness. And then, the fateful day of January 28, 2019, arrived. During the day, Valerie still went to work as usual, and everything seemed calm. But when night fell, a feeling of extreme terror suddenly took over her. Clearly, she was alone in the apartment. No one was following her, but her intuition told her she was in danger. In her insecurity, she called her mother, her voice trembling uncontrollably. "Mom, I'm so scared. Something bad is about to happen." Her mother, worried, pressed her, asking if it had to do with her ex-boyfriend or if someone was stalking her, but Valerie denied it all. She only said it was a vague but incredibly terrible fear. Finally, she tried to reassure herself that it was just an anxiety attack caused by the shock of the breakup a few days prior. Her mother suggested she come home to sleep, but Valerie refused because she thought it was too late at night. She even comforted her mother in return. "Mom, don't worry, it's okay. I'm just having a little anxiety." Just after hanging up with her mother, Valerie texted her best friend, still recounting that insecurity. She emphasized once more, "I feel like someone wants to kill me." The two talked for a long time, but couldn't find a reason, eventually attributing it to her reading too many mystery novels. Around 11:30 p.m., Valerie sent a final message. "I'm too sleepy. I can't keep my eyes open anymore." No one expected that text to be her fateful farewell to this world. The next day, Valerie's mother waited and waited for her daughter to make contact. She thought her daughter had slept in late, so she didn't have the heart to call. But by evening, Valerie's phone still could not be connected. She began to recall the times her daughter's anxiety flared up, when she often liked to go paint alone to relieve stress, so she tried to remain calm. But by the third day, January 30th, things became abnormal. Valerie did not show up for work at the bookstore, something that had never happened before. Worried colleagues notified the family. At this point, Valerie's mother was horrified to realize that something bad had happened to her daughter. That afternoon, her parents and her ex-boyfriend, the one she had just broken up with, rushed to the police station to file a report. Her mother affirmed to the police that before disappearing, Valerie had said someone wanted to kill her. The police realized the seriousness of the situation and immediately checked Valerie's apartment. However, the scene was not as they predicted. The door was not pried open, and the belongings inside were relatively tidy. Only a few items were missing: her iPhone, iPad, wallet, and a few sets of clothes. At first glance, it looked like Valerie had voluntarily left home to go somewhere. The police initially thought the young girl had just gone away to relieve psychological stress after the breakup, but her mother adamantly objected. She understood her daughter. Valerie was as close to her mother as sisters, and she would never disappear without prior notice. Under pressure from the family, the police examined the scene more thoroughly and discovered something unusual. They found a very small amount of blood on the bathroom floor, the edge of the toilet, and on a pillow. However, the amount of blood was too small to conclude it was a homicide. The police still only issued a missing person alert. Valerie's family could not sit still. They printed flyers to paste everywhere and hired a private investigator. The investigator quickly found an important clue. At 5 a.m. on January 29th, Valerie's bank card had been used to withdraw $1,000 at an ATM. However, who the person withdrawing the money was remained unclear because it took time to extract camera footage. The following days passed in hopelessness. There were reports of seeing Valerie at a train station in Manhattan, but they were all incorrect. A week passed, and Valerie was still nowhere to be found. By this time, the police also understood that the golden time to rescue the victim had run out. The hope of finding her alive was more fragile than ever. Her parents spent their days doing nothing but washing their faces with tears. On February 5th, which was 8 days after Valerie disappeared, the final news arrived, but it was heartbreakingly bad news. In the town of Greenwich, Connecticut, about 16 kilometers, 10 miles from Valerie's home, a group of sanitation workers cleaning the highway discovered a strange object. It was a bright red suitcase lying prominently among the dry leaves, about 5 meters from the roadside. The worker felt a chill because 2 days prior he had worked there and had not seen it at all. He tried to pull the suitcase and found it unusually heavy, emitting a foul odor. Sensing something ominous, he notified his manager. The manager, being bolder, decided to open the suitcase, and then he witnessed a scene that would haunt him for life. Inside the cramped suitcase was the body of a woman, curled up in a fetal position. He panic-strickenly called the police. Immediately, Greenwich police cordoned off the scene and began a preliminary examination. The body was female, with curly black hair, aged about 20 to 30. Her hands were tied behind her back, and her ankles and knees were bound tight. The victim's mouth was taped with multiple layers of duct tape. Her face was bruised and swollen. Her clothes were disheveled, but she was not wearing shoes. Due to the cold weather and decomposition, the time of death could not be determined immediately. However, the subsequent autopsy results delivered a gruesome conclusion. The cause of death was suffocation. The girl had been stuffed into the suitcase while she was still alive. The victim's identity was quickly confirmed. It was Valerie Reyes. When the family arrived to identify that cold body, they collapsed. No one wanted to believe that the daughter who had been smiling and talking just a few days ago was now lying in this cramped suitcase. The police immediately opened a homicide investigation. Because the apartment was not broken into, they suspected the perpetrator was an acquaintance. First, they investigated William, the ex-boyfriend who had just broken up with Valerie, but he had been actively searching and had a solid alibi. The investigation shifted to older relationships. The police zeroed in on a name, Javier da Silva. He was an ex-boyfriend of Valerie's. They broke up in 2018. Javier was born in 1995 and came from Venezuela. He entered the U.S. using a Portuguese passport under the visa waiver program for tourists, but had subsequently overstayed illegally. Javier lived in hiding in Queens, New York, and worked part-time jobs. He met Valerie through a dating app. Their romance lasted only 3 months and did not end well. Javier had an aggressive personality and had once wanted to move in together, but Valerie refused because she wasn't ready. After the breakup, Javier appeared bitter, constantly seeking to meet her and stalking her workplace. He also had a prior record of abusing another ex-girlfriend. Notably, upon reviewing the camera at the ATM where Valerie's card was used to withdraw money, the police discovered a man completely covered up, stepping out of a Honda CR-V. Although the person withdrawing money covered his face, the license plate betrayed everything. That car was a rental, and the person named on the rental was Javier da Silva. Not only that, Javier's behavior after the body was found was extremely suspicious. He immediately hired a lawyer, even though no one had accused him yet. The police obtained an emergency search warrant for Javier's apartment. Here, the most irrefutable evidence was revealed, leaving him no way to deny it. In Javier's wallet, police found Valerie's bank card and driver's license. In his house, there was a roll of rope and duct tape identical to the type used to bind the victim. And colder still, the search history on his phone on the night of the murder was filled with horrific keywords: how to clean a crime scene, how to dispose of a body, and maps of the wooded area in Greenwich where the suitcase was dumped. On February 11, 2019, Javier was arrested. Initially, he denied the crime, admitting only to stealing the card. But when his DNA evidence was found under Valerie's fingernails, he began to change his testimony. He fabricated a lie. He said that night he went to Valerie's house. They had sex, but an accident occurred where she fell from the bed and hit her head, dying. Out of fear, he hid the body. He repeatedly said, "I'm sorry, I'm a coward." But the police and forensic doctors did not believe it. The wounds on Valerie's head and face and the way she was tightly bound and gagged showed that this was a brutal attack, not an accident. The FBI got involved because the case involved federal kidnapping, taking a victim from New York State to Connecticut. Finally, the full picture of that fateful night was reconstructed clearly and ruthlessly. This was a meticulously planned murder. Javier rented a car and drove to Valerie's house. Before entering, he turned off his phone to avoid being located. He attacked Valerie, forcing her to provide her bank card password and phone password. After beating her into unconsciousness, he stuffed her into the red suitcase and drove away to dispose of her in the dead of night. Even more cruelly, during that time, he used her finger to unlock her phone to check messages and bank accounts. After dumping his ex-lover's body by the roadside, Javier returned to her home to steal her electronic devices, selling them to buy a new laptop and Apple monitor. He even took selfies with a triumphant look on his face. He drained her account at various ATMs. He was so cold-blooded that the next day he rented the exact same car used in the crime again to wash and clean it in order to erase traces. Knowing he could not escape his crimes and facing either the death penalty or life imprisonment, Javier finally agreed to a plea deal for kidnapping resulting in death. On September 23, 2021, the sentencing hearing took place. The judge sentenced Javier da Silva to 30 years in prison with no possibility of parole. As an illegal immigrant, after serving his sentence, he will be permanently deported from the U.S. Although the perpetrator has paid for his crime, the case still leaves a lingering obsession about the sixth sense. Recall the moment Valerie called her mother, "Mom, I feel like someone wants to harm me." At that exact moment, in reality, Javier was driving a rental car through the dark night toward her house. When she sent her final text, "I'm too sleepy," The killer was standing at her door.
That premonition was so strange and heartbreaking. It was like a warning bell from the depths of the soul that the young girl perceived but was helpless to escape. The death of Valerie Reyes is a reminder of the dangers that can hide within relationships thought to be in the past. And sometimes, the vaguest fears are omens for the most horrific tragedies. The story of the Valerie Reyes case closes here, a sad ending for a young girl full of dreams and a 30-year sentence for a cold-blooded killer. Thank you for listening. Goodbye, and see you in the next Case Files.